So we are really excited today to have Sheila Smith from OCALI with us. That is the Ohio Center for Autism and Low Incidence. And we're going to be talking about something that a lot of you are really excited to hear about, how to handle challenging behavior in the classroom. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that today we're going to be sharing some of our experiences and a little bit of what we have learned over the years. But always remember, when it comes to handling challenging behavior in your classroom, each child is different and each situation is different. So always use your best judgment and talk to your church leadership about how you want to handle things. So Sheila, thank you for being here with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so very much for having me. I'm happy to be here. Yes, I'm Sheila Smith. I'm one of the senior directors at OCALI. OCALI, like was shared, is the Ohio Center for Autism and Low Incidence. We are an organization that serves the state of Ohio. We do professional development and technical assistance for professionals and families. Most of the resources on our websites are free, and we are a hub for the state in the area of autism and complex disabilities. And so I'm very happy to be here and share some of the information that we've got to share with you all.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about challenging behavior. Now today we are going to kind of take a look at it from the perspective of students who have developmental disabilities, but also a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today work for all students who are struggling. So when we see a child who is acting out, what are they trying to tell us?
Well, the first thing to probably consider is that it has probably little to do with you. As the adult around the child. Usually some of those behaviors that the child are experiencing because of internal needs that they have. Maybe these are sensory needs, such as they're hungry or their stomach might hurt, those types of things, and they can't communicate it. So it might be something that's biological related. It also might be because they don't know the expectations. So they're confused. They don't know what's expected in the environment. Another thing might be that they're uncomfortable with sounds or noises or smells around them, and they don't know how to tell you that they need a break, they need to escape, they need a way out. And so some of those things are some reasons that a challenging behavior might occur.
I know for myself, sometimes when a child is being difficult, especially my own children, sometimes it can be easy to think they're giving me a hard time and kind of think about how it's affecting you. But really what they're saying is that they're struggling. And when you put it in that perspective, it's a lot easier to have patience and compassion and empathy. How important is that in setting the tone for a child who's struggling?
Oh, it's so important. You want to create a safe environment for the child. You want that child to have calmness, have kindness, all that at their level. Sometimes it's even getting down on the floor with them, being at their level, but possibly not in their personal space.
So how important is prevention of challenging behavior versus reacting after it's begun?
I always say prevention reduces the need for intervention. And I really truly believe that. If you can help provide structure for the child, provide the expectations, you set a calm environment. Most of our kids that have challenging behaviors do best if the environment around them is calm and structured. So having a visual schedule, outlining the expectations for the child. I can give some examples. As you walk into a church environment, there's always chaos in the lobby. Chaos that you might not feel as chaos, but for a child that has difficulty navigating change and transition, etc., all those people, all the loudness, all that noise. And so when they're coming to your classroom, having them come in a welcoming environment and having a certain and specific place for them to go, having a safe space where they come in and they know, this is where I go, this is my spot, this is my designated area, can help them. Having a visual on the doorway to say welcome, or to let them know where they're supposed to go first, is always helpful. Some of the kids don't hear you in that chaos. they're only going to gravitate to things that they see. And so being able to support what you'd like them to do with some visual representation, whether it's an image or a drawing or a photograph of what you want them to do, will help them navigate that transition into your classroom. And then once there, I know that you have probably learned about the child, and there's possibly a notebook for the child that describes what their likes are, what their challenges are, things that work with them. Make sure you're very well versed in that, so you've set that child up for success. So you've chosen something that the child might like to do as soon as they come in. So you're supporting that child with, oh, this is a fun place, this is a great place to come into, and I know what's expected of me. And then as you transition from activity to activity, set that child up with that same type of transition. Have some visuals to help with provide places and designated spaces for what you're going to do, so that if you're doing circle time in an area, you're doing circle time in that area every single time. If you're playing games in an area, you're playing games in this one area every single time. So the child learns what's expected. Even if you move from one part of the room to the other, the child learns that expectation as well. All those things help with calming. All those things help with setting a safe and structured place for the child.
Just to stop for a minute and kind of recap what Sheila just said, she mentioned a lot of things that we have talked about in Wonderful Works and how they kind of all come together to support the student. So Sheila, one thing you talked about was what we call visual boundaries, which is kind of like having recognizable things in the room that communicate expectations to the kids as far as like their environment. And then I know you also talked about what we call just for me books. And this is really not just for the student, but also for your volunteers. And these are the little notebooks that tell the kind of bullet points of what's important to know about that particular student. We find that is super equipping for our volunteers and really helps the children be more successful because people know what they need to know.
It also gives you a cheat sheet. If you are a volunteer or whatever, you can go and learn, from week to week, you can review those books and learn more and more about that child.
Yes.
So,
And then you had mentioned how important setting expectations are for the kids. And I want to stop here for just a minute, because one of the reasons I think that having children understand what to expect is important is because when we think about ourselves, all of us, and we think about when we get anxious, one of the times when we really get anxious is when we are confused or we don't know what to expect. So when we are dealing with students, especially ones who may have developmental disabilities, they may have disabilities with communication, the same type of anxiety that we may feel by not knowing what's coming next, they feel at a much more intense level.
I totally agree with that. And I think we do and build in supports in our lives using our phone and our calendar, et cetera, to support ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. So when we have the visual schedules and the social stories, that helps them understand what's coming next, and that reduces anxiety. A lot of what we do in preventing challenging behaviors is all about reducing anxiety wherever we can. So Sheila, you had shared with me one time a really interesting story about the importance of a visual schedule with a student that you once knew who had autism. Would you share that?
So I had a little guy, a third grader, who was on the autism spectrum, and he relied on his visual schedule. So basically what it was a laminated piece of paper that the teacher used an overhead marker on every day. They wiped it at the end of the day, and they started each day. Well, they had made a mistake one day, and they were going on a field trip, and they had left it off his schedule. Well, he refused to get on the bus. He said he wasn't going because it wasn't on his schedule. And so we were like, okay, how can we fix this one? And so we took him to the bathroom and we changed his schedule. And so when he came back from the bathroom, the field trip was there, and no problem, he'll get on the bus now. So if we're actually implementing strategies that work for a child, especially children with transition issues and things like that do need these visuals and do need these structures put in place, you'll really see the impact of putting them in place, because they really do center and orient the child. And we know that if we can, like I said before, structure the environment, we can get the most engagement out of the child. When they understand the expectation and they don't have to worry about that, they can engage in the lesson that you want to actually teach with them.
You hit on another thing that's really important, and that is transitions. And that is transitioning from one activity to the next. Can you expand a little bit on that, why that is so important to students who have developmental disabilities and some of the supports that you can use in that?
I sure can. So we all have preferred and non-preferred activities. I mean, think about the things that you like to do. Do you like to wash the bathroom and you don't, would you rather be doing something more than that? So same thing for all the kids that we're working with, have preferred and non-preferred activities. And if children are learning how to structure themselves within the classroom, supporting them in the transition from a preferred activity to a non-preferred and back to a preferred activity, you can do it lots of ways. One simple way I do, you can carry Post-it notes. You want a first, then. First, we're going to do this lesson. Then you get a break. Very simple. Just first, we're going to do and write down what you're going to do, and then what happens next. You can pair that with a visual timer to help them know how long they're going to do that for. But what that does is allow the children that are having difficulty with transitioning to those non-preferred activities, that once I get done with this, I do get to do that. And one of the pieces and parts of that is we do have children that can engage for shorter amounts of time than their same age peers. And so you want to be able to use the notebook that you've got, talk with parents and staff, and understand how long that child can be engaged. So if that child can only sit for 5 minutes, you want to transition them at 4. You want to make sure that you're transitioning them and catching them being good so that they understand the expectation. You don't want the meltdown and then the transition. You want to have that continue to be a positive experience for them.
Even if you have to pull them out of what you're doing a little bit early, you still want to give that praise and that positive accolades for what they did well already. So
always. And you always want to keep things focused on the positive. We put things in place like token economies is what we call them, where we might, if we want the child to earn a break, or we want the child to engage in work before they get to do a preferred activity, we want to help them get through whatever that time is, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever that time is for them. We might take something that they like, a preferred activity, and a lot of times, I'm going to probably go down to a kindergarten level here, but trains are always great. Thomas the Train. There's got to be a developmental stage that's called Thomas the Train now. But what you can do is take a picture of Thomas, very simple thing, and cut it up into 5 pieces, put some Velcro on the back, and put a strip of Velcro on a piece of paper. And periodically reinforce that child. If that child can only sit for 5 minutes, maybe once every 45 seconds, you're putting the front of the train on and saying, "Great, you're doing a great job sitting, Johnny." And then a couple minutes later, you put the second part of the train on. "You did a great job sitting," And so you want to reinforce them with what they're doing a great job at, but you're in control of the time there. So if you see that child can't sit for 5 minutes, he can only sit for 3.5 today, you can hurry up and put all those pieces of the train on, and oh, great, you've earned your break. But what you want to do is you don't take the pieces of the train off if he's doing bad. You keep the pieces of the train on, and you vary the time so that child can be successful. You're the adult. You're the one that's in control of the environment. You're the one that can reinforce the child. And so you can manipulate that a little bit so that you make sure that there's success for that child. And then you give that child their whatever it is break, and then you come back with the same token, take all those pieces of the train off, and start all over again. And so that child continues to earn that train, but you're the one that's in control. So maybe the next time he can sit for 8 minutes, and you find that, after that break, he understood the expectation, he can sit a little bit longer. Then you can spread that reinforcement out. He's not going to be focused on how many minutes it is. You're the one that's in control of that.
Right. Yeah, that's great. I wanted to ask you too, when we talked about preferred activities, sometimes what we do in our ministry is we use the first then board, and we'll say first, and we'll put the activity we want them to do, which would be like sit for our lesson. And then we let them choose between 2 or 3 preferred activities that they are kind of earning that after they do the lesson.
That's a great idea. Choice is always a great thing. One of the things that happens when we're having a behavior issue, or when children are having difficulties within themselves, is, and even us as adults and your children, as typically developing children, when you're upset or frustrated or anxious or angry or anything like that, we usually typically go down a level in communication. We don't retrieve all the words that we have. Mm-hmm. Sometimes all we can retrieve is tears. Those types of things are so working with that child, you become the word retrieval system for that child. So if you can give them a choice between two appropriate activities, that child can choose to move away from that inappropriate activity. So maybe they can't, they don't want to go to the activity right now that you want them to, but there are two other choices. So we can read a book or we can do a puzzle. So just allow that choice. And that sometimes is all that's needed to distract the child from the thing that they just can't possibly do at this minute, but they can do something else. And so giving that choice. And so the idea of having a choice of preferred activities is a great option for kids.
Yeah. And I think another thing that's important is to remember that we need to be flexible. Our students may not always be flexible, but we need to be, because I think, as you mentioned, children may be different on different days. And some days they may be able to sit for 20 minutes, and other days they may only be able to sit for a minute. So I think part of it is reading your child. And if you feel like in order for them to be successful, we do need to cut it short, that's okay. Sometimes what we do is if we feel like a student can't sit for a long period of time, we will go ahead and break it up, what we want them to do, into really small chunks. So maybe they would only do part of the lesson, and then they would get a preferred activity, and then come back for part of the lesson, and then get a preferred activity. So I think it's really important for us to adjust our expectations and meet that child where they are that day.
And that is a perfect example. I think it's creativity. It's being able to pivot. We use that term a lot, if you need to. And the goal is to make the child successful in the learning environment for the time that they're there. The goal is to keep the child as engaged as you can for the time that they're there, and then to help them learn the expectations so that they become more successful as the weeks go on, because the things remain the same, the expectations remain the same. And so they learn the routines, they learn the expectations, and then you'll see challenging behaviors probably decrease and engagement increase with all that consistency.
Can you talk a little bit about a calm area and what that may look like and how important that is for some kids?
Sure. We call it home base a lot of times. It's a place that a child knows that they can go to calm. It can be a variety of different things for a variety of different children to meet their needs. So some children are more calm, like if they're under something, if they're in a cubby, or they like to sit on the floor underneath a table. Some people need that to be able to de-escalate or to calm themselves. Sometimes sitting in a beanbag, something that kind of provides a lot of hugging or support like that. Those types of things can be a calming place for a child. Sometimes just having their own desk or having their own chair that is theirs, and you can always just put their name on the back of it. You can use a piece of Velcro, so it can be Johnny's chair and Susie's chair, but depending on when they're there. But you can just a chair with their name on it sometimes is calming. Some kids or children, it's more calming for them to walk, or to be able to take a little walk or take a little break or get away from the noise and chaos of going into another room or going out into the hallway. Some children, it calms them to jump. If there's a trampoline, a little trampoline close by, or sitting on a bouncy ball or things like that. So there's lots of things that are specific for each child. And just, again, with all the information that you've been given from family and parents, and using their little notebooks to be able to know what might work for that child. And to be able to, for some students, again, I'm really big on setting up an environment with a structure so that the break or the time away is earned, the token economy, et cetera, because then the expectation is that the child, once they earn it and get their break, then will go back and earn it again. There's a line between, I think, letting the child do what they want and supporting the child in what they need, if that makes sense. So, so But again, like I said, build those breaks in as much as possible. If the child can only sit for 3 minutes, and then they need a 3-minute break, go with it. Go for it. Again, you're helping the child learn the expectations and the structure of the environment.
Yeah, and I want to just hit on one thing you said again, just so people don't miss it. But some kids do better when they have a calm area where they can sit and maybe they're surrounded, and other kids need to have that active area. And so I think it's really important that we know that when we set up this break space, which I will say, being in disability ministry for years now, having that break space is that is huge. You really, really need to have a place where they can get away when they need a break. But remembering it's not just about being calm. It's not just a space for them to sit and read a book or sit quietly, because some people, when they're feeling like they need to unwind, need to move. And I like to think of it too, that's the same for all of us. Like for me, when I'm feeling like I need to get away, I gotta go take a walk, or I need to go get on the exercise machine. If I'm feeling really revved up and you say, go sit in this chair and read a book, I'm probably going to freak out. So I just wanted to point out, because you had mentioned that we need to really broaden our expectations and our thinking of what a break area may look like.
Right. It's a lot of times working with our kids, the stuff is, if you can put yourself in their shoes, sometimes it's really a lot easier to process what they're going through, to think about, I working education and being around educators all day, a lot of times after that lunch break, people are sitting in a professional development and they're snoozing. And it's not that they're bored. It's because they need to stand up. It's because they put all that food in their body and they need to actually stand up. And so we listen to our body, and we take those initiatives for ourselves. For our students with complex disabilities, we have to help them figure out what that might be, how they can regulate themselves, etc. How they can, we do not know what happened before the child got into your classroom, besides having to navigate the chaos of whatever the entryway was. But we don't know if they ate or if they slept well or anything like that. All those types of things can impact what's going on with the child that you see. We talk about an iceberg a lot. We talk about the iceberg being the little piece that's above the water, but there's so much underneath. There's so much more of an iceberg underneath. And so all those things are the reasons for what you see at the top. And so you don't know, for some of our kids, what all those reasons are, and you'll never be able to diagnose within the short amount of time that you're working with a child what's going on with them. And so what we try to do is deal with the things that are at the top of the water. But there are so many things that go on below the surface. And so just trying to be with the child in the moment and trying to work through and problem solve through what they're going through is kind of all we can do.
How important is it that we talk to parents to get information about each child before we understand how best to help them with challenging behavior?
I think it's vital. I think parents know their children better than anybody else. Parents also have the history of what has gone on with the child, what has worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past. A lot of times, things at home or school might already be being worked on. And when you get to the church environment, the child just hasn't generalized whatever's working at school or at home to the church environment. So knowing what is working and what strategies have been tried is important, because sometimes it's replicating something that's already being done in another environment. And if you do it the same way, you'll stop a challenging behavior in the church environment. So the parents understand the child's strengths, their challenges, their likes, their dislikes, and they'll have lots of ideas for you of things that might work for the child, some things to try. So I think it's vital to get the parent input.
Yeah, and I would say with that, one of the questions you definitely want to ask parents is, what will your child look like when they're struggling? Because sometimes each child may display feeling uncomfortable in a different way. So if we're trying to de-escalate something, we need to know what that looks like.
Exactly. And there's so many ways that children can show you that they're uncomfortable. Some kids go into themselves and they refuse to participate. And that refusal to participate is because of something going on within them. They just might get stuck. And you have to help them to the next step. Some kids may act out. They may be throwing things and things like that. So what you want to do when you see some behaviors, whether it's somebody stopping and not following directions, or somebody trying to escape or seeming to try to walk away, you want to try to catch that ahead of time. If it gets to a full-blown meltdown where a child is being aggressive or looking to aggress towards others, the primary thing is to make sure that everybody's safe. That's the first thing to do. And so sometimes that means taking all the children and staff that are in the room with that child out, because the child is not able to be moved, who's having the meltdown. So ensuring that everybody else is safe, getting them to another space, and then closing the room. You never want to put your hands on a child unless it's the only recourse, and there's very few situations where it's the only recourse. But what you usually want to do is, when something is gotten to that point where it has escalated, you may have missed the signs. We all may have missed the signs, or it may have happened so quickly that there weren't any signs. What you want to make sure after the safety is that you're calm. You're not the one having the challenging behavior. The child is the one having the challenging behavior. Use as little language as possible. Again, quiet is fine. What you want, the goal after a challenging behavior episode, is to get the child calm and get them re-engaged. Is not to punish the child for the explosion or anything like that. You want to help the child through it in a calm and safe manner. Give them time, because they're going to be embarrassed from their behavior. They're going to be uncomfortable with what happened, all that as well. So you want to help them through that. So remaining calm, helping the child reorient. Sometimes it is engaging them in some other activity. Sometimes it's just getting them involved in something that they enjoy, or something that's close by that they might enjoy doing, things like that, to try to change their dynamic. Sometimes it's just letting them chill and calm down, but the goal is always to reintroduce them back into the lesson, to get them calm and then move them forward. Some situations may require that you reach out to the parent and get them out of the service and pull them in, because when a child is that unhappy or that stressed, the parent probably wants to know about it, and also might have a strategy for it that you haven't thought of. But I keep saying the ultimate goal is for re-engagement. The parent might choose that they don't want the child to stay, that they want the child to go home, and we want to respect those wishes.
So just to recap kind of what you said, if a child does go into a meltdown, what we want to do is first put safety first, separate the child who's melting down with the rest of the students in the class. And sometimes that means it's easier to move the other students away than to move the child who's melting down. Of course, we always want to have some adults with the child who's struggling to make sure they're safe. We give them some space, because I think any of us, when we are melting down, don't want someone right in your face.
Exactly.
So we stay calm. We give them some space. We keep our eyes on them to make sure that they are safe. We don't put our hands on them unless it's an emergency, right?
Exactly.
And then we use, I love what you said, as little words as possible. And that's because when we are in a meltdown, our brains aren't working all the way, right? We can't process things. I want to stop here for just a second, because I think it's really almost human nature when someone is melting down for someone else to try to fix the problem. And we feel like if we fix the problem right now, then the meltdown will end, right? That's not good advice, is it?
No, I think that the best advice is to, for me, is to try to figure out why it might have occurred in your mind, but you don't have to talk that out loud. One of the things, again, for kids with complex disability, and when we're upset and frustrated, we go down in our levels of communication, so we're not listening to you. You can talk at a child who's melting down all day, and that's probably going to set them off even farther, because they're not really listening to you. So you want to allow them to calm themselves, you can use visuals. Visuals are great if you've got a set of visuals, if you've got a choice board, those types of things. When the child is calm to a point where they can engage, giving them a visual and asking them what they want to do next. You're not going to problem solve through why this happened. You're not going to fix it at that point in time. No one's in the mental state to do that. You might be have a meeting afterwards to kind of reevaluate what happened with the child, talk about, what you think the cause of the behavior might have been, how maybe you can implement some strategies with the child so that he learns different coping mechanisms to help him through that situation. But you don't want to problem solve, and you don't want to get to try to talk to the child when they're that escalated.
So our goal is just to help that child calm down before we do anything else. And so I would think this also goes back to what we talked about before, getting information from the parent and asking those questions. Is if your child is in a meltdown, how should we handle it? What works? Because it might be different things for different children. Some kids you might be able to walk through some breathing exercises, and other kids that maybe that's not something they can do. So it's not a one size fits all solution.
Never a one size fits all solution. And it's also, and I know we said this at the beginning, but it's also important to take yourself out of the equation, because a lot of times it has absolutely nothing to do with you. It might be something that happened 2 hours ago, and a child is just processing it, and it's like they're reacting to it now. So your role is to stay calm and help the child get through it and get to the other side of it.
Yeah, and then once they get to the other side of it, you want to try to move forward and not focus on that negative behavior.
Exactly. You want to just see if you can engage them in the next activity. Or if you can't, if there's not enough time to engage them in the next activity with a group, engage them in another activity by themselves. But you want to get back to the learning, back to the reason that they're there, and to be part of the group, to be part of the routine, whatever they can do, whatever they're able to do once they come out of that meltdown. Some kids are going to need some more one-on-one time to do a one-on, like a puzzle or some sort of activity like that. Other students will be able to engage with a smaller group, and then other students will be able to go into a larger group after they've had that meltdown, and they'll be able to go back and engage. And it's just reading that student and understanding where they are.
Yeah, and with that, I'll just add from the church perspective, because we are working with volunteers and we don't have all of the training that a lot of the people in the schools do, you may page a parent to come and get their child, and then you can decide with that parent, should the child stay with the parent the rest of the service or is able to come back in. But what you want to remember is how you talk to that parent in that time, because we want to remember to be compassionate, and to also remember this isn't a problem-solving time with the parent, that if there's something, you can come back and talk about it later. But we really just want to show that parent love, so that they don't feel embarrassed or ashamed, and that they feel accepted exactly as they are.
I so agree. I think we do not know the process that a parent or family goes through when they have a child with a disability, and we don't know what their level of it's not necessarily acceptance, but I know there's a story that is always told. So you're getting ready to go to France. You have your suitcase packed to go to France. You've picked out the right clothes to go to France. You've investigated everything about France, and you're very excited to go on this trip to France. You get on the plane, and the pilot says, "We're on our way to Holland, and you're going to be landing in Holland." Well, you're not dressed for Holland. You don't know anything about Holland, and you're going to land there, and you're going to have to survive. Well, that's a lot of what it's like for parents who have kids with complex needs. And so there are many obstacles that are going on that we're not necessarily aware of, and we have to be compassionate, and we've got to be understanding, and we have to be accepting. This is a child. This is a child that learns differently, may act differently, etc. But he's a child, and like most children, he's not doing something with ill intent. He's just trying to survive his little day, and so we're going to try to help him through that.
So I want to jump back just a little bit. We went through what to do if a meltdown occurs, but if we're in that stage where we can see the child is becoming distressed, what are some de-escalation techniques that we might be able to try?
For me, a lot of things are visual. Visual. Using visuals to help, again, outline what the expectations are. Watching the child and taking them out of the situation ahead of time. We talked about having them earn that reinforcer really quick and get them to a break or in another situation. Sometimes for kids, getting them up and having them take a walk, getting them to another activity. Another time might give them a choice of something different. We talked about the fact that they may not be able to handle one activity, but they might be able to handle some alternative activities. Pull those out of your pockets and offer up some alternates for the child to engage in. Sometimes deep pressure is helpful, and so putting them into a beanbag chair or letting them sit under a table or letting them stand up. Those types of things, sometimes their bodies need something different sensorily. All those types of things, depending on the child, can help to de-escalate a behavior, moving them away from the large group. Maybe it's the person next to them that is making noises and they can't handle those noises. Just allow yourself to be flexible with the child and spend time reading them. One of the things that we don't think about that does have impact on children with sensory difficulties is the smell of perfume. And so if you're wearing a strong perfume, my suggestion is don't wear perfume on the days that you're coming in to volunteer or work with kids. Sometimes just that smell can put their sensory systems off.
Well, I will vouch for that because I do have sensory processing issues, and my hardest sense of all is smell. For me, it's scented candles and those smelly plugins that people put in walls, and it overwhelms your sensory system if you are someone that struggles with that, and it puts you in a bad mood. Like, it makes me feel like I want to have an argument with someone just because my sensory system is overwhelmed. So I can't say enough times you are correct on that smell. That's so true. So another thing that we do at our church, and I would love to hear your thoughts on, Sheila, is we sometimes use what's called the ABC method when a child is feeling distressed. And this is after there's been a conflict. Sometimes a child may want to do something they're just not able to do. It's just not something that's allowed. Or maybe someone else has a toy that they want, but it's not their turn. What we sometimes try is we say, acknowledge their feelings. So if they're upset, say, I get it. I would really like to be playing with that toy too, so that they understand that they're heard and understood. And then we do B, set the boundaries, which is basically just setting the expectations to say maybe like, right now, Susie has the toy and you can get it next. And then we do C, give them a controlled choice, where we give them two things that they could choose from that are both acceptable, and give that control back to them. And we find that that works a lot of the time.
Yeah, that is a great approach. That's a really great approach. Because what you're doing is you're de-escalating the situation with that child. So you're, validating that it's okay to be angry. But we don't have to act out about it, but it's okay to feel that, that your turn will come. And while you're waiting for your turn, you can do one of these other choices. And so you're teaching them a coping mechanism so that they can actually eventually implement that independently. They can go through that process in their mind. Okay, it's okay to be angry. Okay, I'm not going to get this now, but gosh darn, I've got other options. And so while you're modeling that for them, you're also teaching that, giving them a new coping strategy.
Yeah. And the reason we do that is just because, again, each step reduces anxiety. So if you think about yourself, when you're feeling upset, but people aren't listening to you, it makes your anxiety rise. But when you feel understood, it makes your anxiety decrease. When you don't understand what the boundaries are, your anxiety rises. But when you understand expectation, it decreases. And when you don't have any control over a situation, guess what? Your anxiety goes way up. But when you feel like you have control over something, your anxiety decreases. I do want to tell a funny story really quick. So the ABC method, we use it probably every Sunday at church, but you can use it everywhere with your spouse, with your kids, with whoever. And so I've always used that with my kids. And one day, one of my sons refused to eat his sandwich. And before I could say anything, the other one said, now, I know you would really rather have a cookie, but it's lunchtime and we have to eat something healthy. Would you rather have a grilled cheese or a peanut butter and jelly? And my other son was like, PBJ. I was like, oh my gosh, he just ABC'd his brother.
Perfect example of how it's learned. Perfect example of how kids learn it. So it gives them a strategy.
Yeah.
Kids act out a lot of times because they don't know what else to do. They are gone down or reduced the level in communication. They don't have any retrieval of an appropriate response or choice to engage in. And so the only thing that they can grab or gravitate to is an aggressive behavior or a tantrum behavior or something else. If we can teach them alternatives and you just demonstrate how quickly they can be learned, then you equip the child for getting through that next situation as well. And so every single interaction that you have with a child, you as the adult are providing that lesson, that opportunity for learning, and helping them get a coping skill for the next time. It may take them a long time to get to that coping skill. So you may be incrementally getting them there, but eventually they're going to learn that there's another alternative, and that they've got options and choices and things like that. And the tantrum isn't necessarily the best choice. It doesn't make them feel good, and it doesn't make the people around them feel good. And I'm sure that if you asked a nonverbal child with autism if they wanted to tantrum, they would tell you no. If you gave them the appropriate alternate communication device, et cetera, to be able to do that, to be able to communicate that to you. So basically you're equipping that child through your actions.
So we have talked about a lot of great things, but if people could only remember one point from this interview, what would you want them to remember?
It's so hard to pick one, so I'll try to make a one big one. Presume competence with the children that you're working with. They're a child first. Also assume positive intent. They're not, the behaviors that they're engaging in really don't have anything to do with you in most cases. They're really struggling with something that they're struggling with, and you are that calming force for them. And it's our job to help the child through the situation, to be there with them, to be that safe, calm resource to help be solution focused, to get them through the activity and engaged back in learning on the other side. So that's what I would like to leave folks with. The other thing is visuals. They're not going to hear you. But if you can put it visually, that would be really helpful when children are engaged in meltdowns and challenges.
That's great. And Sheila, can you tell us a little bit more about OCALI? Because OCALI really is an awesome resource to learn more about how to serve children with developmental disabilities.
Sure. OCALI, and it's OCALI.org is the website. So we have many resources that are free for people all over the world. We have learning modules on autism spectrum disorders. We have learning modules on evidence-based practices, lesson planning for students, so that we're really looking at presuming competence and also helping people to live their best life. We also have resources for deafness and blindness, and so many resources on a hub of that website. We do a conference every year, and it's been virtual for the last couple of years, and so we have speakers from all over the world and attendees from all over the world, and it's been very nice. That's coming up in November, and then November 16th through 19th this year. I'll do a little plug. And we also have a lot of collaborations across the country. We lead the National Autism Leadership Summit in the collaborative, where I think we have 46 states engaged with us to help at the policy level in changing what's going on for folks with disabilities. We also collaborate with a lot of universities across the country and help with content for programs, et cetera. So there's just a lot that we do, and Most of everything that we do is free, and it's all available through our website. So please come visit us, and I hope that you'll find a resource that's helpful for you.
I'm sure they will. OCALI.org. You're going to want to check it out. So Sheila, do you have any parting words for us?
Just, I really feel that the work that you're doing is essential work. People with disabilities are members of our communities, and we really want them to be welcome and engaged, and what you're doing is helping with that. It's helping to help others by your example, see how to care for, work with, be part of, and engage with people with disabilities. And thank you very much for all that you do in helping them to live their best lives.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you for coming and joining us. You have shared so many great things for us to think about, and I think it's going to make a big difference. We really appreciate it.
Thank you again for having me. Very happy to be here.
Well, there's one more thing before you go. If you want more information about handling challenging behaviors, we invite you to check out a few of our other resources, like Assessing the Situation, Talking About the Tough Stuff, and Supporting Kids with Anxiety with Sarah Perry.